My name is Craig Hoskins. This is Chapter 12, Antimicrobial Treatment, Bio 150. I wanted to start my PowerPoint by, first of all, naming and describing the different types of antimicrobial treatment. So the first one that I would like to start off with is going to be selective toxicity. And um, this affects the effects on the microorganism. Basically, it's like severely toxic to the microorganism. However, it's less or non-toxic to the host. So it mainly damages the microorganisms. And the example that I looked into is penicillin. So the main one, penicillin, it inhibits the PG or the cell wall. Um, and the reason that this is very important is because most of diseases or bacteria or whatever has prokaryotic cells, or they are prokaryotic cells, meaning that they have cell walls. Us being humans or animals, we have animal cells, which is eukaryotic. And eukaryotes do not have any cell walls. So I wanted to give a couple examples of penicillins, or go a little bit deeper into penicillins. This is a college course. Um, so natural penicillin is the first one I'm going to start off with. So penicillins is extracted from the penicillium culture, which is basically a fungi. Um, so there's two main penicillins that we get. You get penicillin V, that's taken orally, and this is the one that contains the oxygen in its diagram, so to speak, in its structure. And just because it contains oxygen means that we have to take it orally, because it can go down into your stomach and then be digested and processed throughout the blood. The next one is going to be penicillin G. This one is to be injected. It does not have oxygen inside of its structure. Penicillin is a narrow spectrum activity. I'll get a little bit deeper into broad and narrow spectrums in a few slides later, but just know that penicillin is narrow spectrum. It targets gram-positive, and what gram-positive means is that it has a thick cell wall made up of PG. Gram-negative has a thin layer. And then uh, penicillinases is um, a thing that bacteria can develop that makes them resistant to penicillin by cutting out the beta-lactam. So the second type of penicillin that I wanted to get a little deeper idea into is called semi-synthetic penicillin. And basically what these are is it's partly synthesized, like chemically synthesized, and it's partly mold, just natural penicillin. So what happens is that they chemically add side chains that make them resistant to any penicillinases. And like I stated before, penicillinases cuts the beta-lactam ring, which is what penicillin needs to, fight off bacteria. It's what it needs to attack its PG wall. So my second type of antimicrobial treatment is chemotherapy, and I mean it's pretty self-explanatory. It's treatment or therapy using chemical substances. Um, the most common example that everybody thinks of when they think of chemotherapy would be cancer treatment, but um, chemotherapy is not limited to just cancer. For example, antibiotic is classified as chemotherapy. And finally, um, the most common one that everybody thinks of when they think of treatment of any type of disease or virus is antibiotics. And what that is antimicrobial agent such as fungi or bacterium. And how this works is bacterium and fungi produce this as a defense mechanism. It's naturally grown. It's in nature, but antibiotics are not used to treat viruses on the simple fact that viruses are different from bacteria. My first PowerPoint went over the whole difference between bacteria, archaea, and viruses. Uh, so we can go back to that reference if we needed to. But antibiotics are not used against viruses, they're used against bacteria, obviously. So there's two main ideas of how these three attack um, the virus or bacteria that it's going after. And the first one is going to be narrow spectrum. And it's an antibiotic effective to a specific type of um, organism, organelle. It's very specific. So I like to think of like tunnel vision as a narrow. It's set on one goal. And my example is penicillin because its one goal is just to target the PG cell wall. Um, so if you get a bacteria that has gram negative, meaning a small PG, penicillin's not going to be very effective just because it's going to be smaller damage to the actual thing that you're trying to attack. So it's used against gram positive for the opposite reason. It's got a bigger PG cell wall. So going in the complete opposite direction from narrow is going to be broad. It's pretty self-explanatory. Uh, broad spectrum is an antibiotic that is used against a wide range variety, both gram positive and or gram negative. Uh, it can cause superinfection. There's a couple of negative things like the superinfection. Basically, so this is going to be used if time is an issue of life or death on the patient. Um, if you don't have time to figure out what the exact cause of the patient, this is where this will come in handy. The only thing is that it's also going to inhibit the good bacteria. That's what causes the side effects such as stomachache, diarrhea, typical GI problems. Going a little bit further into the superinfection, but it's going to be basically an infection after an infection. So it's usually the microorganisms have become resistant to the antibiotics that was used earlier. So two quick things that I just wanted to point out real quick is bactericidal and bacteriostatic. Bactericidal, it kills microbes directly. Odds and goes after them. It's pretty direct, pretty forward. Not going to beat around the bush to say. Uh, Bacteriostatic inhibits microbes from growing. So what that process is that it's going to get in there, it's going to stop it from dividing and reproducing and stuff like that, and versus just killing it straight out. Uh, Both of these have benefits and negatives. I wish I could go a little bit more deeper into that, but that might be a PowerPoint later on in the future that I have to write. So another way that antibiotics can attack the bacteria is through polypeptide antibiotics. And what that does is it affects protein synthesis instead of going directly after cell walls. And the two examples I chose, the first one's going to be vancomycin. It is the most effective known drug against MRSA. When it was first discovered, they thought it was going to be the worst drug against it. However, through further investigation, it's going to be the most effective known drug. If it is also should be noted that it is a narrow spectrum antibiotic. So another example of the polypeptide antibiotics is going to be bactitracin or bacitracin. Um, just like the one I said before, it's going to be a narrow spectrum. The best example of this is that it is used for skin infections or disinfecting the top layer of the skin. Uh, Most commonly, it's found in Neosporin. Doctors also use it to clean tools after surgery and stuff like that.